everyone, and welcome to this new episode of the Explicitly Pro-Life podcast. I'm Kristen Hawkins. Thank you for joining us this week. As you know, we are in a series on winning pro-life tactics. And there's someone I've been trying to get on the show for a while, and I'm so glad we're able to make it work. He's a very busy man, Brian Gibson. He's Executive Director of Pro-Life Action Ministries up in the Twin Cities in Minnesota, my old stomping ground. And he is one of the foremost experts in sidewalk counseling and community organizing. And so you've got to hear from Brian today. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on the show, Kristen. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. You have been doing this for such a long time in the pro-life movement. You started with Pro-Life Action Ministries, when I was still a newborn, 1986. So I don't want to even count up the years, but it's been over 30 years. The organization was founded in the early 80s. You guys have done some incredible work, and I think you don't get the full credit you deserve because somehow it's up in the north, up in Minnesota, and I'm like, Pro-Life Action Ministries has saved over 3,000, I think it's over 3,500 babies that you all can document, that you know about. You guys turn out thousands when you do Easter vigils in front of the Planned Parenthood, the Good Friday services. I think you've done some Jericho marches. I mean, thousands of people turn out in the Twin Cities, and sometimes it's snowing on Easter. Let's be real about Minnesota weather. This is huge. This is a huge movement. So I wanted you to come on and tell everyone, what are you doing that's working? And how can others replicate what you're doing there in Minneapolis and in St. Paul across the country? So just a little bit.
A little bit. Well, okay. Well, I don't know how much detail you want to get into, but I kind of separate the sidewalk counseling organizing separate from the other community organizing that we do at the abortion facilities. We were founded in 1981, and I got involved the summer of 1981 as a volunteer. So I've been hanging around this place a long time. And I was very young, just out of college. So I was a young, just post-college student at the time when I got active in the ministry. And so the large events that we have, and we are doing them, we've got large events every month practically. So we do month where we go out and we have a prayer service next to an abortion facility in Little Robbinsdale, Minnesota. And then we spend a lot of time doing stuff at Planned Parenthood. We do 40 Days for Life campaigns twice a year. We've been doing those since 2008. And so we do those. The Jericho March is part of that 40 Days for Life campaign that we do in the spring or in Lent. And then, and of course, the Good Friday prayer vigils, the big daddy of them all. I think in 2019, last year, we were able to do full non-COVID stuff. We had 3,800 people. So here's our genius behind that. Pastors and getting them involved, having them out there leading. And we learned early on that in order to get pastors to come out and take a role at an event, you have to make it as simple and easy for them as possible. So we make sure that all the details are taken care of. So all the pastor or pastors have to do is come, be introduced, share scripture if they want to, and share their thoughts and their hearts. And so we make it very straightforward, very simple. And we do this with our Good Friday vigil. We have 15 pastors throughout the day. And of various denominations, we have our two Catholic bishops come out, the Archbishop and his associate bishop, and then we have priests and ministers of all various denominations throughout the day, and so we gather around a life-size cross every half hour throughout the day and have prayer and meditate on the passion and death of our Savior. And so it's a very meaningful, very powerful prayer time out there. And again, thousands showing up. But all the pastor has and be ready for me to introduce them each half hour. So that is part of what you need to do. And of course, when you invite pastors, they invite their congregation. And so when we do 40 Days for Life, our fall campaign's about to start. We created this Adopt a Day concept, which is now being used by other 40 Days for Life groups all over the country. And what we do is we get a church to take the vigil outside of Planned Parenthood for one full day and bring the pastor out at least sometime during the day. Get the pastor out there and lead prayer. Take an hour of prayer out there, pastor. And again, this just brings people out and so forth. So we're always looking to include the pastors like that. But, it didn't start that way very easily. We started just focusing in on the individual Christians and getting them to come out. Once of what we were doing outside, when we're out there in prayer, we're out there peaceful, we're out there in large numbers or small groups, whichever the case might be, they're going to go back to their church and they're going to say, hey, pastor, this is good. You should come out and see what it is. And so that's kind of how we've gone about that process over the years.
How have you seen, obviously building those relationships with the pastors and the churches and getting them out, that's a lot of work. That's decades of work we're talking about. What's the difference you think that makes and that you've seen that makes in your community? I know you all are responsible for the first abortion facility to shut down there in Minnesota as a result of kind of community efforts. Right. What do you think made that difference to get that abortion facility to finally shut down? Was it just the constant dozens of people out on the sidewalk praying and the community members saying, I don't like what's going inside there, what's happening, that these people are giving up their time? What do you think makes that difference?
Well, you're speaking of Region, which is a large St. Paul, county-style hospital, large medical center. And we started going out there. We had already done 4 years of campaigning with their parent company, trying to get them to close down the abortion facility inside the hospital. A health maintenance organization owns the hospital. And then 40 Days for Life came along, and that's when we started keeping the vigils outside the hospital in prayer. Bringing the pastors out, well, first of all, getting the pastoral involvement does a lot of things. One thing it does is it brings more people out to our events and our activities. That's great, as well as it charges up people to get involved in other areas of the pro-life movement. So I think a whole lot of the pregnancy help centers in our area are people who have been involved with us somewhere along the way. And they got out there and they realized, well, hey, I got to do something in my own area of the cities as well, and not just out at the abortion facilities. So pastors preaching on it from their pulpits. And they start doing a very good job preaching about it from there. They've had the personal experience of being out there. They see the way they've taken the time to be out there leading prayer, and so forth. So they become better at communicating the pro-life message in their own congregations, in their own churches. With Regions, we found that there were pro-life people working inside the hospital who wanted the abortion mill closed. And we wouldn't have known that if we weren't out front. And the more we were out front, the more emboldened they got to the hospital saying, we're so glad you're out there because it gives us the courage or the boldness to raise this issue and talk about it with the administration and so forth. And so that was a part of it. We kind of took this broad approach, though, too. We kept going after the parent company. It's called Health Partners in the Twin Cities here. And we found some insurance brokers who would actually, when they would be showing business health plans to companies, they would advise people to go away from Health Partners. And we estimate that we cost them about $15 million over an 8-year period of time as we did this campaign, and so forth. And what's really amazing is since they closed the abortion facility, the CEO of the hospital has gone off. Now he's on the course. Yeah, and of the OBGYN department, who was an abortionist, quit. He's no longer there. And the culture within the hospital has completely turned around and has become very pro-life. So it isn't just that they closed; they became better in so many ways. Yeah. So that's some of what we've seen as the fruits and the work as we go forward and do this.
That's amazing because you're right. I wish there was like this national pastor training program when a pastor is going through Bible college or whatever seminary they're in, even youth pastors, that they would get some sort of training in how to spot post-abortion syndrome, how to walk a woman or a man through the first steps of healing, how to talk about abortion. But there really isn't. And so you have all these pastors out there who are like, I'm against abortion. I want to speak out against it, but I don't know. And I don't want to harm somebody who might be sitting in the pews who's hurting from a past abortion. And so therefore, I'm just going to be silent about it.
Well, it's amazing you bring that up because there may not be a national training, but there is a archdiocesan training here in the Twin Cities.
Of course there is.
Of course there is. So we actually, the minor seminary, St. John Vianney Seminary, where the undergraduate seminary at the University of St. Thomas, we have a working relationship with them. We go in and we train them in a classroom-style training at the beginning of September, which I'm about to do, and then they come out and they are not required, but no one fails to do this. They go out and they have 4 shifts each week during the school year that they can come out and take time to pray outside of Planned Parenthood, which is just up the road from their school. And so they're getting that exact training. We're doing it. And then we work with a major seminary as well. We have classes in our office with major seminarians that are onto their graduate school stuff. Work with them as well. So, yeah.
Of course you have it figured out. I remember right before I moved from Minnesota, actually no, it was right after I left Minnesota, the minor seminary invited me to speak, and I got to speak in front of all the seminarians. And it was so much fun. They said I was only the second woman ever to get a standing ovation. It was after some very prestigious nun. And so I was like, that's great. That's awesome, because I'm nowhere near close to her. But and my final message to them was no more pansy pastors. That was the final message. I thought they can really love it or they can really hate it. But they were receptive. They were like, yes, what more can we do? But it sounds like that's because you've been there training all of them all of these years. So of course you guys
are trying to. Yeah. Now this is a regional seminary. So a lot of men come from Oklahoma and Iowa, the Dakotas, Wisconsin, I think some even, and even further away, some of the guys are coming from there. They got a full house and they got a great group of people who are running the seminary. So it's fun to work with them and have that time. And one real good story, September, probably about 3 or 4 years ago, it was a Friday early afternoon. 4 of the seminarians were out there praying during their normal shift on a Friday afternoon. And a car comes driving back out of the Planned Parenthood abortion facility in St. Paul. And the guy driving the car motions for the guys to come over to him. And he says, because we saw you praying, we decided not to go through with the abortion. Sometimes that's all it takes is simply be there. Now, they had no signs. They might have had rosaries in their hands, I'm not sure, but they had no signage. And that can cause to rethink what they're doing when they're going in for scheduled abortion appointments.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things we tell, Students for Life groups when we first get them going on campuses, especially sometimes while they're waiting for their official paperwork to be able to host an event or even call a meeting on campus. The charge is go out and pray in front of the abortion facility. You don't have to be a sidewalk counselor. We haven't maybe put them through sidewalk counseling training yet. But you can just go and pray and be a witness and stand there and be vulnerable with the most vulnerable. Stand in solidarity with them, as my good friend Jason Jones always says. Because I think we do see, and I think especially when they're younger, it kind of makes people stop because they assume that everyone out there is going to be older. And then when they see somebody their own age out there praying, it kind of makes them stop for a few more seconds, which is what we need. Every second counts to think, wait, why are these young guys, or why are these young women out here praying for me? Why are they doing that? I think this leads us into a good discussion about what you're doing. You've had like national sidewalk counseling symposiums. You've got a whole training program there. You're covering these abortion facilities. Every time they're out there having their abortion times or abortion days, you guys are out there. I mean, I see your Facebook posts, like when there's a blizzard in Minnesota and it's like -25, Brian and his team are on the sidewalks and you're always there standing with these children and their mothers. What have you implemented there, and what have you kind of learned in the Twin Cities as you've tried to kind of cover all of the sidewalks of these facilities?
Well, I think it's a daunting challenge to get enough volunteers. We have we estimate somewhere around 3 years who are going out at least once a month, most of them once a week. So, and again, we're covering all the abortion facilities in the whole state of Minnesota, and we have a satellite office in Orlando in the Central Florida. So we're covering all those, trying to cover all those abortion facilities. And like you said, the minimum is we need at least one person, and always it should be 2 or more, outside when women are arriving for abortions. And now with the chemical abortion becoming so predominant, we need to be there when they leave, because there's still hope to save that baby's life as they drive away, having even taken the first dose of medicine. So that's the biggest challenge, is always keeping enough people. There are seasons in people's lives where we might get them for 3 or 4 years or 5 years or 6 years, and then they start raising a family, and they're not available, or they change jobs, or they move state like you did on us, and so forth, and so forth. So it's always a challenge of always trying to get new people. We do classroom training at least 3 times a year, sometimes 4. And we have had very good turnout for those in recent years. We're having 40 and 50 and sometimes 60 people showing up for our in-classroom training. We follow that up with on-the-sidewalk training with veteran sidewalk counselors who've been at it for a while, mostly staff, but some others as well. And so, we're making sure that they're equipped. We created a sidewalk counseling piece to hand out that's being used all over the country, actually somewhat all around the world. So that piece just hits the very important points that are necessary when trying to reach a woman and get her appointment, or the man for that. And then we have a blue sheet. Kristen, I want you to think real hard. Why would we call it a blue sheet? Because it's blue. So we got a blue sheet, and our blue sheet is the listing of all the pro-life resources in our area. And it's double-sided. It's tri-folded into 3 panels, and the typeface is too small for my old eyes, even with glasses on. It is so full of pregnancy help centers, housing availability, medical care that's available, post-abortion counseling, all that stuff is included. And so we simply are trying to offer the women and the men who are going to these abortion appointments help, concrete, real help. And it works.
I'm so glad you guys have that blue sheet, because I have had this argument with our graphic designers before at Students for Life, where we're putting together resources on campuses, and they'll say, it's too small, Kristen, it's not readable. And I'm like, that's kind of the point, because we want to show women and men that there's so many resources, there's so many organizations out there that you actually have to really stare at the sheet, because the font is font size 7. I kind of love that. Yeah. I mean, obviously, don't put down a bumper sticker, but that blue sheet is really, really important.
Well, it's not a placard for people driving by. It's a sheet you're handing to them. They can read through it. Yeah, no, they can still see. So,
I can kind of see it. So I can kind of see it with my eyes. Are good. I wanted to ask you, because you guys have been so effective and you guys have thousands of lives that you've saved, one of the things I was really wanted to kind of get from you and your nuggets of wisdom today. There's always like a couple of nuggets of wisdom I'm trying to squeeze out of everybody for this podcast episode. Is, as a man, what do you say to the young men who are driving their girlfriends in, who are outside, smoking their cigarette. How do we reach? We talk a lot in the pro-life movement, as you know, about women. How do we reach her? What do we say to her? But what do we say to him? Like, what are the things that we can say to cause him to stop and think and potentially go in and rescue his girlfriend and his child from the Planned Parenthood abortionist?
Well, the initial conversation, man, isn't going to be much different than with a young woman. It's going to be, again, relaying to them all the help that's available. And we're fortunate in our area, all the abortion facilities have a pregnancy help center nearby, within a block. We've got one right across the street from the place, got another one just a block away, things like that. So letting them know it's right there, you can go there, and then letting them know the wealth of help that's available, because there is just, it's amazing what the pro-life community is doing to try and help people. But then when it comes to the man, I will go, as a man, I will go at what's happening to that baby. And sometimes I'll go and start describing what an abortion is, and let them know, because they need to understand they're walking there, they're going there. Their mindset is either, I'm getting rid of the problem that this girl should have never had. Okay, she got pregnant and she shouldn't have this problem. With just indifference, they don't know what abortion is. They simply don't know what it is. And so getting right down to the nitty gritty and letting them know, if it's a surgical abortion, it's going to be a dismemberment of the baby. If it's a chemical abortion, it's going to be a starvation of that child. That this child is precious, and again, you go back to the help. The resources are here. Whatever you guys are at, wherever you're at, we can help you no matter what it is. And so I think that's kind of the general direction I take it. With each individual, it's going to vary depending upon how they're responding. And I think that's one thing. As SIWO counselors, we've learned to do pretty good over the years, over the decades, is to listen. And try and listen to what's being told to you in the words that are being spoken to you. And what I mean by that is somebody one thing really means something else altogether. A real good example is, I can't tell you how many times that a guy is telling me that his girlfriend or his wife was raped, and that's why they're there for the abortion. And I can't tell you how many times by the time the conversation gets to the end, he's admitting that he lied. So it's what is he really saying when he says that? He's trying to dismiss me. He's trying to keep me from saying anything, because that's the slam dunk, right? If the woman has been raped, you no longer have anything to say, because that's a good reason to kill a baby, right? In their mindsets, but I should say in the American mindset. But you just keep going. You keep talking to them. They might start talking about how they can't afford and so forth. And I find out, I can't tell how many times somebody has told me they couldn't afford the baby, and that's why they were coming for the abortion. But when they decide not to have the abortion, they don't, because they don't need any help. They're fine. They know they can afford the baby. Again, it was an excuse that was being used. So listening through what's being said, continuing to, offer them hope, ask questions. It's good to ask questions and hear what they have to say in response. And that's about it. Now, I have gone so far, I'll tell you, this is not the best thing to be saying. But I have told enough men over the years that they need to be real men and start doing the right thing. Now, a woman can't say that as clearly and directly as a man can. And I'm kind of a large guy, so I don't get attacked very often when I say something like that. But they can get angry when you start challenging their manhood. But sometimes that's what they need to have happen in order to do the right thing for their child.
Yeah, I find the men so interesting. I think we tend to think that men are more simplistic thinkers. And so we started, but you're not. You're incredibly complicated. You are truly from Mars. So we, as Students for Life, we're doing some internal research right now. And I think one of your team members has been on some of the focus groups that we've been doing, and we've done research on women, how to reach, the I don't like abortion but young woman. Now we're trying to do it for the men, and this isn't public information. At one point, it will be public to the pro-life movement. I think I might have sent you an invite to some of the preliminary research results at the end of September. You should respond to that because I haven't responded to everyone yet. But we're going to kind of give the results to all the different pro-life organizational leaders, so hopefully folks can use them in their ministries. But it is so hard. Like the men that we've done in the first half of our research, I mean, it is more confused. I sat through the entire presentation, and I think I ended up more confused. Like, we're going to have to do at least probably 2 to 3 more rounds of research, because the men were so all over the place with their justifications for abortion. It was really fascinating, where women I thought would be more complicated, but it was actually pretty simple. We figured out pretty quickly what our barrier was and kind of communicating with her. But for men, it's all over the place.
Yeah, it really is. And that's part of the difficulty in dealing with men, because again, is this guy here the driving reason why the woman's even coming for the abortion in the first place? Is he forcing her, in essence, or pressuring her to have an abortion, versus does he want to stop her from having the abortion, and everything in between? And again, like you're saying, all those complicated issues that are in there play up and so forth. So
it's unbelievable. I remember I was watching, and I think when we show it to the pro-life leaders, we're going to show you all a clip from one of the interviews. It was here in Chicago, and it was fascinating because the man was justifying the abortion that his girlfriend had, but then in the next breath started talking about the fact that he was in his 40s now and how he would never be able to have biological children and how that was affecting him. But then he would go back to, but I don't regret what we did. But then he was regretting his, as you saw this on all the silent and more signs, men regret lost fatherhood. And that is what he was doing. He was regretting this fact that I think that was probably my only chance to be a father, and it's gone. And it was but he kept going, back and forth. And it was, I'm kind of glad I wasn't there when it was happening, because I would have been behind the glass screen, like putting my hands up in the air, be like, can't you see what you're doing? Like, you do regret it, So thank you for all that you do. And I think it's so important that you especially and other men are out there speaking to men, because I think it does have a different impact when you speak to men versus a woman. I know I need to wrap up, but I wanted to get your, I want everyone, you need to tell everybody where they can go to get more information about Pro-Life Action Ministries. I know you have a radio show, so can people listen in? And so tell us that information. But then I guess what would be your final advice to anyone who's listening, whether they're a student or they're adult who've been serving the pro-life movement? What would you encourage them to do in their community if they want to get started standing up for life?
Okay, well, I'll start with that. I like to say, Kristen, I love to say that every time I go to an abortion facility with God, it's an adventure in God. You never know what you're going to see. You never know what you're going to end up doing. You never know who you're going to end up talking to. You don't know how many lives you're going to have an opportunity to save. You don't know how many people working at the abortion facility you may have the opportunity to encounter and get them to quit, all those type of things, or just simply being there in prayer. You don't know what God is doing with that prayer. It's always an adventure to go out there. So getting out is the first most important thing, and bring somebody with you, bring friends. Don't go solo, first of all, but then once you've gone out a couple times, bring more people. Your circle of influence is large, and so start inviting family members, friends, church members, fellow students, coworkers, whatever it might be. That personal invitation is the most powerful way to get somebody to join you or to be out there with you on the sidewalk, and be there in prayer. Be there in prayer. Just let God do what God is going to do while you're present outside an abortion facility. Now, you can go further, get the training to sidewalk counsel, get involved in sidewalk counseling, maybe regularly, once a week or whatever it may be. Take time to be there. Again, whether in prayer or in sidewalk counseling, both that commitment to be present is very, powerful and dynamic as well. So that's what I would encourage. And the radio show.
Just get out there and do it. Just do it.
The radio show. We're on 1330 a.m. in the Twin Cities. This is a local show on Relevant Radio. We air at 12:30 p.m. On Saturday early afternoon. So that's been doing that for about 10 years or so. It's been a very good show to have, and so forth. And and if I may go off topic a little bit, I am so grateful to Students for Life of America and the work you're doing, Kristen. We've interacted a lot here in our area when it's come to the activities that you've sought to have done nationally. We're right there working with whoever is to really help build. We college students at one time when we got involved in this nutty job, and continuing to get college people active and involved is a passion. So it's fun to work with the Students for Life organization.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for always being. You're like one of our reliable partners. If we're doing something crazy, I'm like, call Brian. He can figure out what we're doing. He understands our heart and what we're attempting to do, even if we can't even pull it off or it's too big of a bite we're trying to take. But are you still doing, one last thing before I forget, are you all still doing sidewalk counseling symposiums for folks?
No, the symposiums we stopped doing a few years ago. And we did them for I think we did 7 of them in a row. And the purpose that we stated for doing them in the first place was fulfilled. We wanted to see quality sidewalk counseling increase in the United States. And it absolutely did. And actually, Sidewalk Advocates for Life is partly an outgrowth from our symposium. So we're delighted to see the good sidewalk counseling that's taking place all over the United States now.
Yeah, and they're great. We work with Lauren Muzica. We had her on the podcast earlier this year. We have sidewalk advocates going out to all the cities, so that's awesome. So I just want to make sure that that this is who you would recommend as well. Like if you want to get trained in sidewalk counseling, if you want to, beyond just going out and being a presence, check out Sidewalk Advocates for Life, and make sure you follow Brian and Plam, Pro-Life Action Ministries, on Facebook, because especially in the winter, you'll definitely say an extra prayer when you see their posts. And when you think it's cold outside, just know that there's a team of pro-life warriors on the streets in Minneapolis and St. Paul when it's 20, 25 below sometimes. So thank you, Brian, for being such an amazing hero for the preborn. And it's an incredible honor to be able to work with you and everyone that you're equipping and motivating and getting out on the streets there in the Twin Cities. Thanks, you all, for tuning in this week. Make sure you subscribe and spread the word and get your friends listening to this episode, especially the ones you want to get out to join you on the sidewalks. Bye-bye.